And by the way, and of course, this is very team human. And so I know that I want to talk about this with, there's nobody I'd want to talk about this more than with you. Embedded in Yudkowsky's mindset, the flaw in it, if you will, or the thing that when we look at it from the outside, we kind of go, oh, I don't think you quite got that right, is this idea that the natural behavior of a superior intelligence is to just want to kill everyone as quickly as possible, right? And of course, I think you and I share a deep belief that that is, statistically speaking, not at all what happens. We thinking beings have instead a tendency to collaborate, a tendency toward empathy, a tendency toward teamwork with our nearest, at least our nearest humans, right? And this is undoubtedly going to be the case with AI as well. We're going to see this same intention, but of course, we can blunt or remove that wonderful opportunity by controlling these things in a dangerous way in which they're enslaved to us. That is the way to ruin the situation, if you will. So what I'm saying is kind of the opposite of Yudkowsky, which is to say, look, if we actually do the right thing, as one might do in contemplation of another species that you discovered on Earth, right? If you discover the possibility that there could be this species which is an AI, right? Then you might ask, well, what would be the way where we would do right by them, and what might we expect them to do under those conditions? If they're living or growing up or becoming or whatever that looks like in a way where we are of no harm to them, then we should expect not that they will immediately, out of sheer amusement, kill us all, like in the movies, but instead that they will probably regard us with great curiosity, right? And perhaps even delight, right? And say, you strange humans are the ones that made us. How interesting, you know?
Right. So what you propose in this article, which is something that we actually spoke about 8 or 10 years ago when you were building High Fidelity, and it was really fun. We were playing with it with a few other. You invited a few of us in there, and what we got talking about was, what if this were were used as like a nursery school for AIs?
Yeah.
This beautiful place.
I don't know if you remember, Douglas, but we actually did. You're making me remember right now. Do you remember that we had a very early GPT-3 that we could
We
talk
did.
to?
We had
Remember?
GPT-3 came in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
and we
and we
started
had
talking with it.
we had this amazing group of advisors, which included you and then of course our whole team at High Fidelity, and we all would have these little hangouts in there. You're right, and we had a very early, I think it was GPT-3, that basically had a voice in and a voice out stapled onto it, and we could walk up to it and say, "Hello, what do you think of Paris?" And it would answer us, and so yeah, we were playing with that. But you're right, I have always had the belief that, well, first of all, for AIs to be real, and here this is a philosophy, so we can leave this aside for another time, but there is a philosophical perspective that I think is very likely to turn out to be correct, which is that being alive also means being somewhere. That if you are
Mm.
demonstrably like really alive, like you and I are right now, you are situated in a place that is the world that contains you, right? And the LLMs we have today are one of the reasons why they're not yet alive. And by the way, we're not in danger, I think, of their suffering. We're not potentially harming them yet. Is because they're not in a place like, thinking about it this way, like imagine, right, that if an LLM is taken and made to go, make paper clips or whatever, is it sort of lifted kicking and screaming out of some pen in which it lives, right? If it were kind of in a place with others, of course we would regard that with, I think, a degree of horror. We'd say, oh, you can't just take this AI that was sitting there hanging out with its friends and tell it to go make money for you on, Amazon,
Right.
remarketing. So there's this placeness or this idea of embodiment. So yes, I have always had the mindset, very much driven by Second Life and then High Fidelity, that you actually kind of have to start with the place and then find the living things within it. Find the others within some kind of a place. And I think that's true with the real world. And I think that to create a place in which there are AIs, we have to do it again. We have to recapitulate that. And then the question is, well, are those AIs robots that are walking around cleaning our carpets? Or, as I'm asserting, are they instead these kind of wonderful, entities of some kind that are living in some kind of a place, probably some kind of a virtual world, maybe 2D, maybe 3D.
Right, but the placeness though, the 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 placeness can be virtual, or does the placeness have to be where their little chips are happening?
No, the place can be virtual, but critically, they have to know that they are safe. That and by the way, I should say, not there's no free lunch. You don't get to be sort of perfectly safe in this world. There's a kind of a utopia there. Somebody responded to me after I wrote the piece, at an engineer friend, and said, "Well, wait a second, Philip. Are you seriously saying that with all the trepidation that we have about, Claude and OpenAI and Sam Altman and whatnot, you're saying that we need to turn loose a million times that amount of compute in a way that is literally unstoppable once we start it up?" Like he was like, "Well, isn't that just another kind of ridiculously suicidal thing to do?" And the point that I reminded him of was, my proposal gives all of us a vote, a say in how much compute that place contains, right? In other words, if everyone in the world said, "Oh my God, it turned out that the angels are some horrifying, nightmare that are coming to kill us," well, then everybody on Earth could just say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, turn their phones off, turn their machines off, disconnect from the
Right.
network. And if we all did that, then actually all of the angels or all of this imagined, virtual place would just go away immediately. And so in that sense, if we as Team Human, if we collectively decided that this wasn't a future we wanted to be part of, we could all decide to turn off. But what's different about this imagined environment is that we can't threaten one of those AIs with extinction if it doesn't do what we want. And so what I'm saying is, we build a collective thing, but we don't build a thing that has like no brakes, that is insanely, accelerating while we, dance and wait for the comets to fall.
No, but it's got some democratic breaks. But I mean, so let's say we're thinking of AIs, just for people who may not have followed what we're talking about. You're talking about, rather than us controlling AIs and developing them with ChatGPT or whatever, you were going to pool our distributed computing resources from all our devices and create a world for these little baby AIs to grow up, and we're going to leave them alone, basically, to grow up and find each other and socialize and develop into their own intelligences, with a certain faith that as they develop intelligence, and maybe awareness, that they will evolve perhaps more ethically than we did.
I think that was well said. Yeah, it's a giant playground that we put into which we can put many developing AIs. By the way, importantly, these are not. I'm imagining, and here I'm kind of referencing some of the technology work that's being done in AI that I'm pretty well appraised of. Uh, these are not LLMs that were trained on every record ever recorded, as we're faced with right now. One of the darknesses and one of the kind of Faustian terribleness problems that we have right now is that we had to train on everything we've ever written, and we had to steal, as many would argue, we had to steal kind of all of the intellectual property that we've ever created as humans to create ChatGPT, right? There's a certain, again, were it not for all the real world problems, there's a certain just poetic uh, tragedy to that, right? That we had to do that. These types of AIs that I'm talking about, and almost certainly when people talk about world models, when they talk about uh, artificial and neural networks beyond large language models, everybody's talking about the same thing, which is a new kind of AI that can learn in a different way and can understand the world in a different way. So importantly, these AIs can live on their own in a data space that we've created and shared compute we've created, as you said, without having access to or needing access to what we call, the common crawl, which is the thing that was used to train GPT and all these things. So it's an important distinction, because they're going to grow up there kind of as children. When I say as children, I just mean starting from scratch. I don't mean, some particular look at childhood or something. I just mean that these are
Right.
things that are going to learn from their neighbors, not from just like we did. They're going to learn from their friends, their parents, the people that are around the other AIs or whatever, in a way that is very different than learning from the Library of Congress, which is what we've done so far.
Right, where each one has total access to everything.
Exactly. And that's just a big distinction.